which of these qualities are present in our own heart and to what degree. So this is what helps us know what we need to do. As I said last time, it's almost like a checklist, the kind of qualities, and we then measure it against our own present state. The good thing to know is that none of these things are carved in stone. In other words, if I have some strengths now and some weaknesses, I should not think like that's for this whole life. The strengths that we have now can be lost if we don't preserve them. The negativities that we have now can be overcome if we make a strong effort to overcome the negatives. So, whatever our present state is, we should not think that that's who we are. Because what the Gita points out is that every one of us is a child of God. Our true nature is pure and perfect. We may not feel like that now. And the reason we don't feel like that is that there are some obstructions, something is preventing these qualities from manifesting. And what Krishna is pointing out is, what are those things that are preventing the full expression of who I really am? So this verse then, 4, which we just read, says, ostentation, arrogance, self-conceit, anger, rudeness, and ignorance belong, O Partha, to one who is born for demoniac wealth. Now, many of these things might seem to be very distinct, but they are very much related, almost synonymous in many ways. So the Sanskrit word is dambha, translated here as ostentation. We might say broadly the tendency to show off. Now, showing off can be of two kinds. That you have something to show off and then you show off. And the other thing is you really don't have it and yet you show off. It's like it's like a superiority complex. The very usage complex, when we use it, a complex itself shows that if the person is truly superior, that person won't be suffering from superiority complex. That person will be just superior. But the moment we call it superiority complex, it really means is that the person is not really superior, but somehow thinks of himself or herself as superior. So ostentation is a kind of thing that we don't have, but we put on a front, a mask, something that we pretend to be what we are not. We try. Now, here is an interesting question. We know that many of us, we know that we have certain weaknesses. Do we have to then just, in the name of truth, go on advertising our weaknesses everywhere? We don't have to do it. But neither do we need to pretend other than who we are. So we can definitely, in every situation, put your best foot forward, but pretending other than who we are, so long as we remember who we are, that's not so bad. Although all kind of pretensions are bad. But a time comes when we start pretending things to ourselves. So self-deceit, deceiving oneself, is even worse than deceiving other people. So ostentation comes under that category. The second word is darpa, arrogance. Arrogance, again, as in the commentary below, he mentions the pride that we have due to the wealth, scholarship. So come out the things that we have and we feel as a kind of pride attached to it. That is really what is referred to here by arrogance. The Sanskrit word is darpa. Abhimana. Abhimana is self-conceit or egoism. All these things that we attach to our I. Again, as I said, these things are not so watertight different qualities. They're kind of related to one another. Anger, It's very obvious. We know what it means. Rudeness. Now, rudeness is sometimes described by commentators as hurtful sarcasm. Now, sometimes being sarcastic itself is not necessarily something bad. It can be, there are people who are very delightfully sarcastic sometimes. So, sarcasm in itself is not necessarily, as I said, something negative, provided it is meant in a kind of a playful, joyful way. That's fine. But sometimes a kind of a hurtful sarcasm, those are the characteristics of someone who doesn't have spiritual tendencies. And sometimes the commentators say that if someone is blind and you tell the person, oh, you've got such a beautiful eyes, or someone who is deaf. So, in other words, mocking or making fun of people's disabilities and doing it in a kind of very sarcastic way, that's very hurtful. In fact, that's criminal in my view. But that's what is meant here by parushya, the Sanskrit word. And ajnanam, translated as ignorance, really means a lack of discernment. When we do the wrong thing at the wrong time for a wrong reason, then that is ignorance. And so that is what is meant here by ajnanam. So all of these qualities, ostentation, arrogance, self-conceit, anger, rudeness, and ignorance, belong to one who is born for demoniac wealth. Next verse, 5. Daivi sampat vimokshaya nibandhaya surimata ma shuchav sampadam daivim abhijato si pandava. Divine wealth is deemed to lead to liberation and the demoniac to bondage. Grieve not, O son of Pandu, you are born for divine wealth. Now remember, Krishna is narrating this, teaching this to Arjuna, and he said there are these two kinds of people, those who possess divine wealth and those who have this demoniac wealth. Now when you tell something like this to someone, it's obvious, it's natural for Arjuna to feel, if there are these two classes of people, which of these classes do I belong to? And so Krishna is really answering that. He said, grieve not, don't have any worry, don't have any anxiety. I see that you have the qualities essential for spiritual life. And think of it this way, if he were totally unfit for spiritual instruction, Krishna wouldn't have given all this teaching. So it's pretty obvious. And he makes it clear, it's divine wealth, the qualities described in the first 3 verses of the chapter, that will lead us towards our spiritual goal, that will take us nearer to God. Whereas the qualities described in this verse will take us towards bondage, will whatever it is that is making life difficult and stressful for us, the qualities described in this verse make life even more stressful. We'll get more into bondage instead of freedom. And now, as I said, the rest of the words Krishna will describe in a much greater detail what those qualities which take us away from God mean. So it's a much detailed discussion, as we will see. Verse number 6. Dvau bhuta sargau lokesmin Daiva asura evacha Daivo vistarashav prokta Asuram partha me shrunu. There are 2 types of beings created in this world, the divine and the demoniac. The divine type has been described at length. Now hear from me, O Partha, those of the demoniac. So again, very obvious, very clear that, so he first described the qualities and then he's mentioning, it could have either have been the order could have been reversed. He now said that there are two kinds of people: those who have divine qualities and those who have demonic qualities. Verse 7. Pravrittincha nivrittincha janana vidurasuraha na shaucham napi chacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. Persons of demoniac nature do not know what to do and what to refrain from. They have neither purity, nor good conduct, nor truth. As I said earlier, that if we know what should be done and what should not be done, we are on the right track. But oftentimes, when we do what should not be done and don't do what should be done, then we are in trouble. In fact, we will see that all of the pain that we experience in life, if we can trace it back and try to find a cause, we may not always find it, but when we can, we see that we did something which shouldn't be done, or we didn't do something which should have been done. That's one of the principal causes of pain in life. And as I said, sometimes we may not be able to trace it to anything. And when we can't trace it, what is inferred is that not that it just happened at random, but it must have happened, the causes of which I don't remember. It's a little bit like sometimes if you have a stomach ache, and then you say, why did I have a stomach ache? I have no idea. Now, it just can't happen at random. Something had happened for that ache. Any kind of an ache or pain in the body is really, it's actually a pain or an ache is our friend in some ways. Because a pain or an ache really is telling us that something is wrong. Just think about it this way. If something were wrong and there was neither pain nor ache, we would not even know about it. Because if we know something is wrong, we can do something about it. If we don't, it's like this. If a house is on fire and the people at home don't even know about it, they are in deep trouble. Because only when the fire comes very close, and it will be too late to save either the house or themselves. But if you have a smoke detector, the smoke detector is helpful. We can't say just switch it off because I can't sleep. Because a smoke detector will tell us if there is fire or there is smoke clearly. And then if I'm able to detect it quickly, I'm able to do something. So whenever there is any kind of ache in the body or in the mind, both the body and the mind are sending us a signal, something is not right. So we must pay heed to that signal and then try to find out what is not right. So pain, terrible as it is, there is something good that the pain is doing. In fact, there is some kind of illness, some kind of ailment. I don't know the medical name for it. When people don't feel any pain at all, and that's the most dangerous thing. If you're walking and your toe hits against something and you don't feel the pain, it could be bleeding. There could be cuts on the feet, and you wouldn't even know about it. And so pain there's a lot of thought has gone into thinking about pain. They say that until 1960s or 70s, pain was not a topic over which a lot of thought had been given in medicine, even in medical field. It was like, oh, there is pain, take this medicine and we can get rid of it. But how does pain occur? Why does it occur? So it's in the last 30, 40 years, a lot more thought has gone into it. And therefore we have now, pain has become a specific field of research and study. So all the pain that we experience in life, as I said, is either something that ought to be done was not done, something that should not be done was done. That's essentially what these persons of demonic qualities have. They do not know what to do and what to refrain from. They have neither purity. Purity, again, as we have seen earlier, can be internal and external. Nor good conduct, nor truth. So none of these things that we see, essentially, what makes us good, wise human beings. If these qualities are not there, we belong to this other category. Verse 8. Asatyam apratishtham jagadahur anishwaram aparasparasam bhutam kimanyat kamahaitukam. They describe the world as being without a truth, without a basis, without a God, and brought about by mutual union, as nothing but originating in lust. We might say, why do these people not know what should be done or what shouldn't be done? Why do they not know what does being good, honest, truthful mean? Because the scriptures, there are so many scriptures, so many good books, so many teachings of the great ones. There is a lot out there. It's not that it's simply due to ignorance. And the reason is described here because these people don't even believe in the scriptures. They don't believe that there is anything called God. So they describe the world as being without a truth. Without a truth means we don't even know how this has occurred. That in this, it's not that we don't know, but that there isn't anything. Let me put it this way. The way, the language that is used by non-believers, if you like, that everything can be known only through a natural cause. Now, when you try to bring God into it, or some kind of a spiritual terminology into it, that's seen as a supernatural cause. And so the naturalist, so to say, that we will try to describe and explain the world purely through natural way. And by natural really means only what my little intellect and my little way of reasoning will reveal to me. And so that's how they said, without a truth means nothing beyond what is visible. Without a basis, there is nothing lasting. If it's changing, it's changing. There isn't anything unchanging behind it. Without a God. Now, Ishvara, the Sanskrit word Ishvara, literally means a ruler. And oftentimes in many religious books, God is described as a ruler. We read in the Bible, there is the word kingdom of God. Now, of course, if there's a kingdom, then there is a king. And a king is the one who rules over the kingdom. And the Sanskrit word Ishvara really comes as a ruler, as a king. So the idea of seeing God as one who administers this entire creation, that's been a part of religious language. And these people deny that there is any such being called God. So how has this world come about then? And he says, brought about by mutual union as nothing but originating in lust. So all the material objects have come just, you can think Big Bang, and you can have all kinds of theories behind it. That's how these things have come. And what about things with life? What about living objects? Again, the materialists sometimes they're pretty vague in spite of claims to being very specific. If you see even in the present language in science, they don't go beyond saying at some point life appeared. Now, at what point it appeared and why it appeared and how it appeared, these questions are not deemed important enough to be investigated. It's just that at some point in this apparently material world, a life seems to have appeared, which just seems to be a modification of matter in some form. What here he mentions is, all that they say is through mutual union, nothing but originating in lust. We know that life comes through union between the male and female of every species. And what brings the male and female of every species together is a desire to join, a desire for union. So that's all the explanation that these people have about the world. That is just nothing but originating in matter, and at the basis of all life is nothing but desire or lust. Verse 9. Etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtat manolpabuddhayaha prabhavantyugrakarmanaha kshayaya jagato hitaha. Holding this view, these ruined souls of small intellects and of fierce deeds are born for the destruction of the world as its enemies. If you read the commentary, it's very interesting. It says, holding this view of the materialists, these ruined souls of impure mind or small intellects, accepting only what is perceived by the senses, and who are therefore of fierce, cruel deeds, are born for the destruction of the world as its enemies. But destruction of the world is not necessarily a physical destruction, partly because the definition of world itself is rather ambiguous. Because what is the world? What do we use the world a lot in our conversations, but not everyone means the same thing. For physicists and astrophysicists, the world might be not only this solar system, but this galaxy and all the galaxies, and as much of the known material universe. Probably that's what they might refer to by world. So even to imagine the physical extent of the world is beyond us. For many people, when they speak of world, they're not really, how many of us really think of the solar system and galaxy when we think of the world? Most of us just think about this planet. And a lot of people are not even thinking about their planet. They're just thinking, oftentimes, maybe their part of the world. So again, we have this division. So there is this planet, and then we divide the world into, say, East and West, the Western world and the Eastern world. And then within the Western world, again, when you can have Europe or North America. Within America, then there's so many, all of these different countries. So sometime when we say, it's a little bit like when you think about the World Series, the baseball World Series. Well, what is that world that is being spoken of? So as I said, the world is a very, very ambiguous term. And for most of us, when we use the world, we are not even referring to our own country. For most of us, think about it this way. By and large, our daily life, it moves in a certain geographical area. There is a set number of things that we tend to do over and over again daily. Maybe on a weekends or on vacation we might do something different. But by and large, we keep on meeting familiar faces, doing some familiar work. These are definitely people part of our world. If you watch the television often, then maybe sometimes some of these names you hear on television or some news things that you see, they may sometimes become a part of our world. And if you read a lot of fiction, then your world might extend a little bit. That's about it. Most of the time when we refer to the world is this little bubble within which our life goes on day after day. That's all that our world is. And therefore, when it is said here that this world is without a basis and so on, just recognize that the world itself, the word world is a very, very flexible term. So the destruction of the world really means if we have some idealized notion of what an ideal life would be, And sometimes that gets described in the way we think of heaven. Heaven is a place where there'll be peace and joy, there'll be nothing negative, everything will be wonderful. Now that's our idealized version of what a world, the kind of world we would like to live in. And that would be truly heavenly, we say. Now, what prevents that kind of heavenly world from being a reality is these people, and that's what is called by destruction of the world. The more the number of people who hold these views that there is no truth, there is nothing, it's all material, everything is just born of desire, everyone is selfish, just make hay while sun shines, and so on. These are the people who destroy the world. And the problem is this: there are people who are disturbed and they just keep to themselves and they don't much disturb the rest of the world. They're not so harmful in some way. So they are not at peace, but they don't at least disturb the peace of the world. But there are other people who don't have peace inside and will not live other people in peace either. So that's the major problem. Because those who create trouble outside, they're able to create trouble outside because there is trouble going on inside. And all of these peace negotiations that we have in different parts of the world, in the troubled parts of the world, many of these peace negotiations don't work, they often fail, because people who are trying to negotiate peace are themselves are not at peace. And so, even in order to bring about a peace deal, even in order to bring warring groups at a common table and try to bring about some understanding, some reconciliation, the one who is a mediator, the one who wants to bring peace, has to be completely at peace. And so, bringing about peace is a great thing, and that would be a great service. But there's a great amount of preparation needed for that. It's not something that can be learned only through strategy. Of course, you will need to be trained about how to deal with this thing, how to resolve conflicts. But all of those tricks about resolving conflicts will not work if I'm a conflicted person within myself. So there should not be any conflict within me. Then there is some hope, some chance I might be able to resolve conflicts which are outside. And so by the destruction of the world here is meant, these people have already destroyed. There's a lot of inner destruction going on within themselves. And that is why whatever they do, they bring about a greater amount of destruction outside as well. And because they bring about a destruction, they are called here as enemies. Verse 10. Kamam ashritya dushpuram dambhamanamadānvitaः mohat grihitva asadgrahan pravartante shuchivrataः. How is it that they go about destroying the world? Through all of these things. Resorting to insatiable desires, full of hypocrisy, pride, and arrogance, they of impure vows act, holding false views through delusion. So all of these by impure vows is meant that there are sometimes in religious books, sometimes they have certain vows described or certain things to be done. Now, if you do those things in the way they ought to be done, then it will produce the desired result. If you just do it completely in a contrary fashion, then that would be an impure way of doing things. That is what is meant here. So people who don't follow the norms, who in fact flout those norms willingly, knowingly, those are the people then who create all this destruction. Verse 11. Chintam aparimeyancha pralayantamupashritaha kamopabogaparama etavaditi nishchitaha. Beset with immense cares ending only with death, regarding gratification of sensual enjoyment as their highest aim, and convinced that this is all. So this will go on to just a part of the verse. So, but it's important. So when do all our worries and anxieties end? And I've heard people saying, and I'm sure many of you may have heard it as well, that, oh, this is just going to be like this, and all this can end only with death. The truth is that it will not end with death. If the cause of my problems is something going on in my mind, then death will not solve the problem. Because death, as it is described in the Gita and in Vedanta in general, is really death of the body. The mind doesn't die. The mind is too subtle, it's finer. And so just this gross material body that stops. So death is really this body becoming non-functional. The mind is the same. So if you believe in rebirth, the mind that we have now is the mind we have had in all of our previous births. And it's the mind that we will have in all of our future births if we are born again. If the problem is in the mind, death will not solve the problem. And so really, yes, if the problem is purely physical, then probably you can say, well, after death, this body is gone, I get a new body. So there is something to be said about that. But there are two difficulties with regard to that as well. First of all, very few of our problems really are just physical or just mental. The body and mind are both material, and they act and interact upon one another. So problems can be predominantly physical or predominantly mental, but usually the line separating from the body and mind is not as distinct as we think. And the second thing is that from the theory of rebirth, we have no idea, we have no knowledge, and we have no control over what kind of body we will get. The body, for instance, we have a human body now. According to the theory of rebirth, that does not automatically mean that we have been human beings all along in our previous births. Nor does it mean that we will continue to be human beings even if we are born again. There is no guarantee. And the story that I've told again often, and maybe I can repeat it quickly, is this, that there were these two friends and who are very curious about rebirth. What exactly does happen? Or what does heaven or hell mean? And so on. And so I'm not sure whether they believed in rebirth, but they did believe in heaven and hell. So they made a pact among themselves that whoever among them dies first they will try to contact the spirit of the one who is dead. And the other person has to report how heaven looks like. And so one of them then, after a few years, died. And then through some of these, they have these contacting the dead spirits kind of things some people do. So apparently this person who was living managed to get in touch with the spirit of his friend who had died. And then the first question he asked was, so how is it there? How does it look? And then the friend said, oh, it's so beautiful. It's pleasant weather, great sunshine, lots and lots of grass, green grass, and there's no work to do. Just eat and sleep, eat and sleep. And then this friend was amazed. Wow, he said, for the first time I'm able to hear a clear description of what heaven is and what you do there. You're so lucky to be in heaven. Then the spirit of the friend says, heaven? I'm not talking about heaven. I'm now in Montana. I've been reborn as a buffalo. So it's just a story, but what it means is there's no guarantee. So if someone feels that, oh, let me just now... So suicide doesn't solve any problem. That's the basic message from this. Because some people do resort to suicide as, well, that will end all my problems, and it really doesn't. In fact, it could actually make the problem worse. Shankaracharya, in his book, That Crest Jewel of Discernment, Viveka Chudamani, he points out something very important. He says, just putting an end to this body, all that suicide in a general way, but the real suicide, the real hurting oneself is this, that having got a human birth, having had an opportunity to realize God, to become enlightened, we do nothing about it. That these opportunities that have come to us, we don't make good use of the blessings that we have received in our life. That is the real suicide. That's what Shankara says. And so there's a whole new, a different way of seeing what does hurting oneself really mean. I would like to stop here because this verse will go on, and then we will resume discussion when we meet next week. But if you have any ideas, thoughts, comments, questions on what we have seen today, you're welcome.
Here, Krishna is talking about spirituality and all this. So, what about those people who don't believe in God, but they're good, they're helpful, they try to help others? Who about them? Like, do they belong in good, bad, which category actually? But they don't believe God at all.
I don't know which category they may belong. Maybe you could create a third category. We don't have to kind of put this into either this, it has to be this or that. For now, the explanation from the perspective of those who do believe to God, about these people, would be that these people are storing up good karma by being helpful other people and so on. So that good karma will help in their eventual evolution. Maybe if not in this birth, next birth. So people who believe in God will look upon these people as good people, but somehow they lack the clarity to be able to see that there is some reality behind this changing universe. Now, this is the perspective of those who believe in God. So they will believe that such people are storing up good karma, if sometime maybe later on in this life itself, or maybe in some future life, they will be able to see that there is more to life than what is visible. And sometimes it is seen. In fact, we see that there were people who began their life not believing in God, not believing in anything, but they were very good people, very helpful. And over time, at some stage in life, all these good acts help to clear their minds to the extent they were able to see, yes, I think there is a deeper truth behind this world. Sometimes it may not happen in this life. And so religious people believe then, well, if not in this life, in some future life. Now, as far as from the perspective of those who don't believe in God in any way, it really doesn't matter, because this is all that exists. So the idea is just do good. The question I have tried to ask people who call themselves as atheists is, what is the motivation for doing good? Why should I do good at all? If the goal of my life is to be happy, and one way would be helping others makes me happy, and that's certainly a motivation. But if happiness itself is the goal, and if there are times when hurting someone can make me happy. Suppose for some person, and there are people like this, that hurting others makes them happy. Is that okay? If happiness itself is the goal. So what is it that, and again, I'm not here suggesting that there has to be one definitive answer to that. But those who don't believe in any higher life or of God, they will have to figure out, why do I want to do hell? Why should I sacrifice? That's the only thing. So I completely appreciate the point you have raised, because there are a lot of people who self-identify as atheists and agnostics, but who are very good people, very moral people. And moral life, ethical life, is extremely strengthening. It gives us a great strength to meet life's challenges. And so I think it's good to do that. Okay.
Maharaj, in the 7th verse it is said that the demonic nature, they don't know what to do or what should not be done. It is said that in Mahabharata, Duryodhana's character is the one who says he knows what to be done and what should not be done, but he doesn't feel like doing it, or he doesn't feel like avoiding it. Does this verse mean that he's not completely on, like they say, towards the dark side, or
Darth Vader? Yes, it's true. Good. I'm happy you brought that up, because sometimes such people may not know what should be done, what shouldn't be done. And if you do something wrong without knowing that it's wrong, that doesn't make it right, but at least it's not as bad as knowing something wrong and doing it consciously. Now, in Duryodhana's case, the one that you mentioned, there is a verse which says that Duryodhana, the villain character in Mahabharata, he says that, I know what is dharma, I know what is the right thing to do, but I just don't feel like doing it. I know what is wrong, I can't stop myself from doing it. Up to this point, he was being honest. But then the next two lines are equally important. And that's what many of us do. So the next two lines, he tells Krishna, but what can I do? You, Krishna, the Lord is sitting in my heart and just guiding me. So that's the problem. So even someone who is doing bad or something wrong can say, well, I have been ordered by the divine, because if God does everything, why am I responsible for all the evil that I do? Now that's kind of sometime when we speak about, we have the phrase, a devil quoting scriptures. So yes, of course, God, there are statements which says God dwells in the heart and God controls everything. Now, a legitimate question would be then why am I being held responsible for a sinful act, for something that wrong or bad that I do? And the answer is simply this, that when I do something wrong, do I do it with the idea that I am doing it or the Lord is doing it? In other words, so long as my ego is active, so long as everything that I do, I feel I am doing it, then I cannot simply say only when I do something wrong, well, that's the Lord is doing it. That doesn't work. But if I truly remember, if I truly believe that everything that happens in my life, the Lord is doing it, I'm only an instrument, then I will be incapable of doing something which is not right. I will automatically do what is right. And so that's the explanation for that one. Yeah.
Swamiji, the spiritual seeker has some quality, we have to develop some quality, but you still have the anger, jealousy, all still remain. So if I have the anger and I can turn this anger to a positive, because sometimes I get angry that I couldn't do the japa the way I thought, and I get angry with myself. So how do I describe that anger is a negative quality, but that anger is putting me more to do the right thing?
Yeah, that is exactly what Sri Ramakrishna taught. He said that all of these negative qualities that we have, if we can just change their direction, turn it toward God. So, in other words, instead of getting angry at other people and other things, I can be angry like, oh, I haven't yet reached my goal. I haven't yet realized God. So, instead of lusting after the perishable things of this world, why not have this intense desire for God? If you have to have lust, then let me lust after this infinite divine being. If I have to be greedy, then instead of being greedy again for these perishable material things, let me be greedy for the divine wealth that is spoken of. So it's just changing the direction. Yes, that will certainly help. Yeah.
Swamiji, we talk about as a human being, and I think last time we talked about divine character. When we say character is built around, and you can learn things, and your natural character will come along at some point after you grow, because when you're young, you're being kind of influenced by the family and everybody else, and that's so. Coming to this, what I call as the devilish sort of characteristics, it's also about that people sometimes kind of like by deed and action are different from my thoughts. And it's in the sense that sometimes people will be doing the right thing in terms of actions, but their thought process sometimes could be what I call as manipulative. Mm-hmm. How does that kind of reconcile with our kind of way of making all three same, that good?
Good question. A major cause of stress within us is that our thoughts, words, and actions are not in sync. That's the major, if at all. And I think that was one of the practices that Sri Ramakrishna stressed. That in fact, if we can bring our thoughts, words, and actions in harmony, it becomes so much more easier then to cultivate these other virtues that are necessary. And the inner stress that we experience is sometimes we know what is right, but we say something else and we do yet something else. That's the problem. And we need to find creative ways of kind of bringing them all in together. And then we will experience an inner harmony. And the greater inner harmony we experience, we then become agents. We become a nucleus. Through us, external harmony becomes possible. That is why Swami Brahmananda, a great disciple of Ramakrishna, once said that if there is one person in the family who is very serious about their spiritual life, who prays, meditates regularly, it's not just that one person who gets the benefit of that practice. The entire family gets the benefit of that practice. So if there is one person who is peaceful, who is calm, who is in harmony, that's very infectious. It will be, if there is someone who is extremely calm and peaceful and harmonious, when you spend some time with that person, that will somehow percolate into you. And you will experience certain amount of peace. And that the reason we, in the books, they speak so much about seeking holy company, a company of the holy, company of the wise, is that somehow just being in their company, we're able to absorb some of their characteristics. And so in order for us, therefore, to love others, we'll have to generate a lot of love within our own heart. Because if there is love within me, I don't then have to make an effort to love everyone. If there is love within me, it's automatically going to come out. Because what is inside will automatically come outside. A lot of times, what is inside is not so pretty, not so good. and we are aware of it, and so we then try to dam it up inside. We just kind of wall it. And then externally, we try to cover up the inner not so good stuff with speaking sweetly, doing something good, which is nice. But at some unguarded moments, what is inside will come outside. So you'll have to be like constantly on guard because if there are certain aspects of your life which you don't want the world to know about, you always have to be on guard. The moment you're not on guard, it'll suddenly come out. On the other hand, if you have been very conscious of trying to harmonize your thoughts, words, and actions, you have nothing to hide, nothing to be afraid of, then you are a truly free person. Then you don't have to be on guard because your whole life will become spontaneous and free. That's why sometimes it is said, well, the beautiful quote I read many years ago, which said, live your life in such a way that you don't have to hide your diary. I think that's a wonderful thing to strive for. And many of us may not have reached that state yet, which is fine. We don't have to be too ashamed about it, but we know at least the ideal that we have to strive for. That let me try to lead as transparent a life as possible. Because the joy, the peace, the contentment that we seek, that's the way it'll come. Yeah. You wanted to ask something?
Yeah. My question is about the first thing you talked about, the showing off. Especially in this competitive world, in job, we see that unless you show your potential or you show you are very good, you don't get, like, just doing doesn't help. You also have to show yourself that you can do it. So where does it stop? Like where I'm showing off or where I'm...
No, I get your point. There's nothing, I didn't mean showing off in that sense. I mean, of course, if you go for a job interview or something, you have to put your best foot forward, show the best side of your personality. That's okay. In fact, whichever way we want the world to take us to be, whatever way we hope that our friends and our family will look upon us as a certain kind of person, and even if we have not become that kind of person yet, so that's kind of a persona we put forward because that's what we want people to take us to be. Intrinsically, there is nothing wrong in it, except that provided I'm making a sincere effort to become the kind of person I want the world to take me to be. Otherwise, if I'm just kind of using it as a mask, people can think like this. It's like at some point, Jekyll and Hyde have to merge and become one person. That's the difficulty. Because at some point in life, we will realize it's so much more easier to actually be the kind of person we want the world to take us to be, rather than try to pretend to be what we are not. Because as I said, you can't be vigilant always. The moment in your unguarded moments, this the other inner person will come out. And so in itself there is nothing wrong, provided, I said, we all know what an ideal person, well, let's put it this way. Every one of us may have our own idea of what an ideal human being is like. We may also know that I haven't become that ideal yet. As I said, I don't have to go on advertising to the world about all my weaknesses. So put your best foot forward, that's fine. But provided you don't ever stop making an effort to become the kind of human being you want to be, I think then it's okay. And here's another one, it's a small little anecdote. In 1981, I was in New Delhi, And at our center there, we had a youth conference. So about nearly 700 college students from all over the city were participating. And for the valedictory session on the last day, we'd invited Mrs. Indira Gandhi. She was the Prime Minister of India then. And she came and she spoke for almost 20-25 minutes. Very inspiring, wonderful. Extempore talk, she had not prepared it very well. And one of the incidents she mentioned was, I still remember it, it was very nice. So she said her grandfather, his name was Motilal Nehru, he was the father of Jawaharlal Nehru, who was India's first Prime Minister. So she said her grandfather told her when she was little, her name was Indira, so they used to address her as Indu at home. So the grandfather said to her, Indu, there are two kinds of people in this world. Which are those two kinds? One, who work, and a second kind, who want all the credit for the work. And so the grandfather said, I want you to belong to that first group who works, because it is much easier and there is less competition. So similarly, trying to be what we would like to be is a much more easier and fulfilling a task than always trying to pretend to be what we are not. Because the other one, as I said, there's always a danger. When you, at some unguarded moments, the truth will come and people will be shocked. Oh, this person is like this. I didn't even know that. That's the idea. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment, what Shrikant said. Maharaj, the butcher story, look could be deceiving. His action was, if you see from outside, it was totally different, but he was such a spiritual man. So we can, in order to keep our job, sometimes we carry a lot of caps, but we can be like a butcher.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good thing. Swami Vivekananda refers to that story in his Karma Yoga lectures also. Yeah. Yep.
So Swamiji, we have 3 questions online. I'll give them in order in which they came. The first is from Kim. She asks, Swamiji, isn't everyone a child of God? Isn't everyone as a child of God born for or have the potential for divine wealth? So like Arjuna, how do we know if we are fit?
Yes, we are all children of God according to religious people. They believe we are all children of God and potentially we have the fitness within us, but we have to work to manifest that fitness within us.
Then Ashok asks, so is it destiny which controls our action?
No. It's our will. Our past mental impressions may tend to influence the kind of decisions we make, but the decision we make is not predetermined. So at every moment, at every point, we have the freedom to do or not to do whatever it is that we do or not do. So we have to take responsibility for our choices because the choices are not predetermined.
And then finally, Sai asks, isn't anger a result of attachment to outcome? Maybe fear of losing what we have or not getting what we want?
Oh, sure, yeah. Anger can come through many different reasons. But clearly, one of the reasons is that I don't get what I want. It's like this. When the obstacle in the fulfillment of my desires is weaker than me, then I can afford to get angry. But if the obstacle is stronger than me, then I have to hide my anger. It's like sometimes your boss says something to you, you hate it, you don't like it. But it's not always possible to just hit back if you want to keep your job. So then that anger will remain kind of muted. It will produce more frustration, right? So any number of different scenarios are possible. Okay. So we will stop here today, and then when we begin next Wednesday, we will resume this discussion of 11th verse. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhuhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. On Sunday, our subject will be understanding duality. Next Wednesday, we will continue the study of the Gita, and on Tuesday and Saturday, our Aarti and meditation will also continue as usual. So you're welcome for all of these programs. Let's conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.